Alright, so in this part, we're going to talk about the assignment statement. So a simple assignment statement will look like this: a variable on the left and then equal sign in between, expression on the right. So we can also call it right-hand side, and then left-hand side. Okay. In this case, variable again is an identifier, a name in Python, and expr is short for an expression. And one thing remember about an expression, it'll always evaluate a single value. Okay, again, so expression on the right hand side is evaluated to produce a value which is then associated with the variable name on the left hand side. Okay, here's an example. So remember this from the chapter 1 chaos example. X equal to, again, we're going to try not to use the equal to because it doesn't really refer to what we're trying to do. But what it does is there's a right hand side expression and then and identified on the left. So what it will do is it will do 3.9 times the current value of x times 1 minus the current value of x. A new value will be generated, it will be produced, and it will be assigned to x. So x, the next value of x will be updated. Okay, and remember this from Fahrenheit will be assigned to, that's the correct term to use. Fahrenheit will be as 9 divided by 5 times Celsius plus 32 will be assigned to Fahrenheit. And then here's another example, pretty simple. And then, okay. So variables can be reassigned, as you see at previous examples. Variables can be assigned as many times as you want. So in this case, my var holds 0, and then you change the value to 7, now 7, or you can say my var is now my var plus 1, so it becomes 8. Okay, so the analogy to describe what a variable is that we can think of as a box. So variables are like a box we put values in. Instead of in the real computer term, it's not actually a box, it is a memory address. So and then it'll be ready for us to store a value in that memory location. When a variable changes, the old value is erased and a new one is written in the same space. Okay, here's a figure can show. So imagine that the variable x is a box. So first you can put the value 10. Then with this expression, when we say x plus 1 is assigned to x, now we kick out this 10, we get rid of it, and we updated 11. We put 11 in the same space. However, this model of assignment is simplistic for Python. Python doesn't really work that way. So Python doesn't override these memory locations or boxes. Assigning a variable is more like putting a sticky note on a value and saying this is x. So and then here how it looks like we'll put 10 in somewhere in the memory, and then we'll put a sticker saying that x refers to that 10 in that memory. If we change the value, so x plus 1, it basically creates a new value, 11, at somewhere else, and then repoints, so points x to this new value. And if no name is pointing to 10, it'll be deleted forever. So the purpose of an input statement, let's talk about the input a little bit. The purpose of an input statement is to get input from the user and store it into a variable. And then again, on the left side, we have the variable name. On the right side, we have eval, input, and we provide a prompt to the user. Here, eval is a wrap around input, if you notice that. Let's take a look. input is wrapped with eval. So what happens when you execute that line? First, prompt is printed. The input part waits for the user to enter a value and press enter. The expression that was entered is evaluated. That's why we call eval, to turn it from a string of characters into a Python value, whether that's a number or what type of number. And then finally, the value is assigned to the variable. Okay. For string input, again, we don't have the eval, we just read it as a raw text. We assign it to the variable. Okay. Eval is pretty useful function, but you have to also be aware. It's powerful, but it can also be dangerous. So when we evaluate user input, we allow the user to enter a portion of our program, which Python will then evaluate. So which means that if someone knows the Python could exploit this ability and enter malicious instructions so that they can capture private information or delete files on the computer. So eval will evaluate an actual Python code as well. And this is generally called a code injection attack. That's very common in HTML forms. So when writing programs for your own personal use, this is probably not much of an issue, but it is something to consider. When the input is becoming from an untrusted sources, like users on the internet, the use of eval could be very disastrous. All right. So next, before we do an example, let's talk about simultaneous assignment as well. And very unique to Python. You can have several values can be calculated at the same time. So you can have remember our assignment operator. You can have, say, two expressions on the left side, on the right side, excuse me, separated by comma. You'll also have two identifiers or two variables on the left, so they can be assigned to simultaneously. So what we do is we evaluate the expression in the right hand side first, then assign them to variables on the left hand side. Okay, here's an example. So imagine we have a variable called x and a variable called y. We can say we can have two expressions here. This will evaluate to x plus y. This will evaluate to x minus y, and they will both be simultaneously assigned to sum and diff consecutively. Okay, this could be very useful when we want to swipe the values between x and y. Here's how it will this work if I say x is y, y is x, or assign y to x, then I assign x to y. We notice here that we actually lose the value of x, right? And then by replacing by the value of y. So we need something called temporary data. So we can technically should say assign y to temp, then assign x to y, then assign temp to x, so we don't lose the value. Okay, so in Python we can swap the values of two variables quite easily, just saying this x comma y basically assigns y to x, then assigns x to y without losing the values. Here we go. So print x and y, they'll look like this, and then swap them, and then the new values will be 4 and 3 instead of 3 and 4. Okay, this can also be used when receiving user input, although I do not suggest that, but you can have two inputs provided at the same time, separated by comma, so we can have two variables claiming them. Here's an example. So we can spam an x It says enter the number of slices of spam followed by number of eggs. However, you have to make sure that you provide them by comma, although I do not suggest this type of use. Okay, so when we come back, next we're gonna do some examples. When we come back, we're gonna talk about definite loops.